Well, I'd like to start off by welcoming everyone, and my name is Deanna Lewis, and I'm in Tucson, Arizona, and have been a Tucsonan for about 44 years. And I'm excited to have the opportunity to share a little bit about my story. I graduated from Santa Rita High School in 1980, and at the time there weren't any women firefighters on the City of Tucson Fire Department, and my parents were incredibly encouraging, and they're like, Deanna, why don't you try out for the fire department? And it's nothing that I had ever thought about. My high school counselors didn't talk to me about the fire service or being a firefighter. And so I'm like, well, why not? Let's give it a shot. And so I ended up joining the Tucson Fire Department and became the first woman firefighter in the history of Tucson Fire Department, January 30th, 1984, which next month will be 40 years ago. And over that 40 years, a lot has transpired. And I would like to just take you through a little bit of my experience, what my role was in the fire department. And I'd like to back up a little bit and just tell you about where I hail from. I was born in Albany, New York. My parents are Dolores and James, and I'm biracial. And that also has had a significant importance on how I have gone through this past 40 years, my experiences as being a woman, as being African American, and really the intersections that my identities cross, including I'm part of the LGBTQ+ community. So my intersections have given me different perspectives and has significantly impacted the way that I view the world, the way that I view my community, and what it means to be a person with multi-intersections in 2023. The Fire Academy was challenging. Being the only woman in the Fire Academy with 24 other males, I can remember going to a locker room all by myself. And one of the recommendations from the City of Tucson Human Resources is at the time was, it's better to put people through in pairs. And for whatever reason, that didn't happen. And so when we would break from our trainings, our didactic, our drilling, 24 folks would go into one locker room, and I would go into a makeshift locker room. It was actually the captain's locker room, and I would just put a sign there that said I was in there. And I can remember feeling lonely. Very lonely, feeling like I didn't belong, and also really excited about this new career. I successfully completed and graduated the Tucson Fire Academy, the old academy was at 797 East Ajo Way, and I'm surprised I remember that address. But really a lot transpired there, and my very first fire station was Fire Station number 5, which is located on Tucson Boulevard on Grant Road in between Tucson Boulevard and Country Club. And my first captain, Tom Elam, was a probationary captain, which means he was in his first year in that position. And I was a probationary firefighter, being the first year in my position. And one of the things that I really appreciate about my first fire station is, one, it was a very busy fire station, so I got a lot of hands-on experience. And the team and the crew that I was with was incredibly supportive. There were folks at the station that really took me under the wings and mentored me, and Tom Elam was one of those people. One of the things that happens in the fire service, or had happened in the fire service, is this sort of camaraderie that maybe a lot of folks don't understand, but it's designed to make you feel like you're a part of. And so one of the things I recall my very first 24-hour shift at the fire station is, as the recruiter, the boot as they refer to, is you're the last one to go to bed, you answer the phone on the first call, you clean the head, which is the restrooms, and you don't watch TV, and you're studying so you can learn about your new role. And when it was time for me to turn in, we had dorm-style sleeping facilities at the time, and I go in and there was 6 mattresses stacked up on my bed. And you can hear the laughter, and really that was a form of acceptance. There's other terms for it. It could have been referred to as hazing. I didn't experience it in a hazing manner. I just knew that there was a welcoming and being part of the team, and that was something that had taken place in the Tucson Fire Department as a warm welcome. Station 5 really provided me with insights into my community, things that I had never seen. As a firefighter EMT, you go into every household. Medical emergencies, fires are not restricted to any particular sect of society. So I got to see a lot of my community through the Tucson Fire Department and really learned so much about my community. I spent a couple years, not quite 3 years, as a firefighter EMT, and I decided that I wanted to promote, and I promoted to the position of fire inspector. And my initial duties were really code enforcement, which means making sure exit signs are well lit, doors aren't locked, et cetera, et cetera. But really, I had the opportunity to move into public education, and that was an area where I thrived. I had a small team. I went from shift work to 8 hours a day working at fire headquarters at the time, which was down on North Church or South Church, and that's really where I began to shine. I had a wonderful supervisor, Dan Newbern, who eventually became the chief of the fire department and has since passed. He was a tremendous mentor, friend, and role model for me. And during that time, in 1990, I received Firefighter of the Year award, which is a prestigious award that's awarded to people who do above and beyond, contribute to not only the department, the city of Tucson, and our community. And so that was really one of several highlights in my career in the fire service, was being selected as Firefighter of the Year. One of the programs that I started while I was Firefighter of the Year that added to that accomplishment is I started the Tucson Fire Department Cadet Program, which is now in its 32nd or so year in existence. And it was based on the fact that we didn't have a lot of women. I was the only one, or a lot of minorities on the fire department, and the city of Tucson was really upping their efforts to increase representation of underrepresented minorities and women in the fire service. So I had the opportunity to be the recruitment coordinator. I did a lot of citywide outreach. And one of the end results is the cadet program, which recruited high school students and taught them all the skills that were needed to be a firefighter over a summer. And also, I thought of it as, like, we'll call it a pony league, right? As if you're in the pony league, like baseball, you start off and then you get the skills, you develop the skills so you can move to the major league. Well, what that looked like is the cadet program, and then hopefully providing the skills and opportunities for them to go through the testing process, be successful, and become a Tucson firefighter. And so that's a program that makes me smile, because one of the first young woman, Jenny Lacoste, was right out of high school. She graduated from Sahuaro, that's right, Sahuaro High School from TUSD, graduated from high school, and her entryway into the Tucson Fire Department was through the cadet program. And the cadet program is still going, so that's one of my significant accomplishments, and I'll say gifts, to the city and to the fire department. And the fact that they still keep the cadet program going really expresses the importance of having these pipelines so that we can encourage underrepresented minorities and women to consider the fire service as a career choice. The fire service also was challenging. I can assure you that not everyone was happy that I was there. There was the folks that were gracious, were mentors, and I think understood perhaps had some understanding on what it would have been like for me to be on the job. And I don't think I really recognized the implications because I was young, and you're very excited and optimistic and just think that, this is really wonderful. Diversity in the fire department is so important, because if you go on a call, and I would use the example, and you go to the neighborhood where it's all people that are striped, and if you all have all polka dot people on the fire department, well, you don't have any representation that can actually help to be a liaison between that. And then give you a more concrete example is just to say you are 6'6" and your shoulders are out to here, and you've got an attic fire and it's like this. having diversity can mean a lot of things. It meant that someone who was a smaller frame could actually go up in there versus the person that's 6'6" and has shoulders this broad. So I really understood at a very young age the implications of having a diverse workforce, which I didn't have the language for then, and I have the language for now, understanding things like systemic and structural racism and sexism. And so that really has played a big role on how I approach the different positions that I have had since I've been out of the fire service. There are some really key people that were incredibly influential in my career in the fire service. John Hockamy, who was one of those folks that you sort of heard rumors about and was terrified. And when I got to Station 7, he was that person that really took me under his wing and just mentored me and got me through engineer, which is the person that drives the fire engines or the ladder truck, to go through engineer certification. It was really a wonderful team, and I learned so much about teams in the fire service, because on a crew, you have 2 firefighters, you have an engineer, and you have a captain. All of us came into the fire department as being a firefighter EMT, and then you have these opportunities for promotion. So the team was incredibly cohesive. We spent 24 hours a day, and we worked 365 days a year, you know, doing that shift work. So the environment of the fire service is like none other that I have ever been in the context of the camaraderie that I experienced, the shared experiences of going on 911 calls, which really built that camaraderie and that kinship, which I still have with a lot of my coworkers and colleagues from the fire service. Because of those shared experiences that the majority of the population won't have, it builds a special bond that you don't see in law enforcement, and really is very, very unique to the fire service. Some of the initiatives that I got to work on, and I'll fill in a little bit about where I am now, was really the public education piece. Is how do we address things like childhood drownings? How do we address increased gang violence and shootings, because these are the things that the fire service is responding to. So it really gave me an insight on, when people work collaboratively, how we can start addressing the problems that plague communities and societies. And I really saw the intersections of so many disciplines come in so that we could prevent someone under the age of 5 from a submersion incident in a swimming pool. And if you look at the codes and ordinances in the city of Tucson, there's someone who's responsible for a lot of that in the context of safe children and preventing childhood injuries. And his name's Randy Ogden, who was also another phenomenal role model and mentor for me. He showed me how to work with the community in a way that it benefits everyone. And so when you look at the spa and pool ordinance or the codes, when you see a gate that's self-closing on a pool, when you see that the width between the bars is less than 4 inches, it's all designed to prevent a child from drowning. And I got to be part of that, and I learned so much about the other organizations, the organizational structures, how the city operates, and it has influenced me significantly in where I am today. I spent 20 years in the fire department, in the fire service, only 14 in Tucson Fire. And people were like, Deanna, you only have 6 years left to retirement. Why are you leaving? There were parts of my experience in the fire service that weren't so hospitable. There was isolation, which is a form of violence, which for me, my experience was you'd be going to battalion-wide meetings, which were lots of fire stations in a particular section, and you'd show up for trainings, and there were people that would ignore you, not acknowledge you. And when I think about that, that was really hard. That was significantly hard, and I don't think people really understand the implications of when we ignore or isolate someone, that it truly is a form of violence. So the violence that I experienced, while maybe nuanced, where it wasn't outward, physical aggression, it was the psychological and the emotional aspects of being ostracized, being talked about, not being included, that were really difficult. And I am so incredibly grateful for the folks on the fire service that actually took me under the wing, befriended me, and really embodied what it meant to be a team player. So I had both of those experiences. I got to a point with Tucson Fire where I didn't look forward to going there anymore. And that's when I decided that I was going to leave the Tucson Fire Department. And I had put in some contingency plans, and one of them was I enrolled in the United States Navy and served as a hospital corpsman in the Navy Reserve for 6 years. And I went and sought employment with another fire district, and it's Tubac Fire District, so our colleagues down in Santa Cruz County. So I spent 6 years with the Tubac Fire District, and that was completed my 20 years in the fire service. After the fire service is really, I think, where it starts to get interesting, is I became a physician assistant in February of 2024. So in a couple months, I will have been a physician assistant in the state of Arizona for 20 years. And when I went into becoming a physician assistant, when I graduated, I went right into emergency medicine because it's what I understood and it's what I knew and it's what made sense to me. So I spent about 6 or 7 years working in emergency medicine. I've also worked as a PA in women's reproductive health and have worked for Planned Parenthood of Southern Arizona. I also have worked as a PA moonlighting in the Pima County Adult Detention Facility. I've worked for Customs Border Protection as a PA in both points of entry and Border Patrol stations, providing humanitarian aid as a PA to our immigrants and our detainees. So I have seen quite a bit and diverse perspectives of what happens not only locally in the community, but also in a regional area. I've worked in Pima County, as far out as Ajo. I've worked in Douglas and Cochise County. I've worked in Nogales and Santa Cruz County, and doing humanitarian aid. And that's, again, one of the other roles as a PA. And I currently work as a PA in urgent care, and I work what's called PRN, which means the company I work for, I give them 1 day a month. And I work in urgent care, and I just see patients who lacerations, colds, coughs, flus. That wasn't enough becoming a PA. I started a nonprofit community health clinic in, I think, 2002 or 2003, when I entered the PA program before I became a PA, and it's called Dequanesh Community Health Clinic, and we ran for 20 years, and we just dissolved the corporation, actually March of 2023. And I started Dequanesh because I saw all the medically underserved populations, which are the same folks that sometimes we're trying to recruit: women, people of color, LGBTQ+, Black, Indigenous people of color, queer, trans people of color, all have significant health disparities. And so the mobile health clinic made sense. So we partnered with organizations like Clinica AAMSAZ, Primavera Foundation, setting up where they have housing, transitional housing for women and folks who identify as female. So we'd pull up the mobile clinic, we'd plug in, they installed a special outlet for us, and we would do things like TB skin tests. So if they were unhoused or unsheltered, they would have their TB skin test so they could go in when it was really cold. So we really had wonderful partnerships with the community. We partnered with Southern Arizona AIDS Foundation, Emerge, which is a center for victims of domestic abuse. We partnered with the College of Public Health, which will lead me into my next endeavor. But after I got my PA, started the nonprofit, I went back to school to get my master's in business administration at Eller School of Management. So I have an MBA from the executive MBA program because I wanted to learn, how do we make a nonprofit economically sustainable? And it was an education that just really blew my mind, because I went in there with such a naivete about, like, it's a nonprofit, social mission, we're doing the right things. And I just got a really beautiful lesson on how the world works and that we had to make a profit. So I got my MBA, continued to run Dequanesh, partnering with lots of different community partners. And then I had the opportunity to go one more level to increase my knowledge and education. And I enrolled at the Melanie and Zuckerman College of Public Health. And in December of 2018, received my doctorate in public health. And that really started to put things into perspective as I reflected back on my entire life about, why do we have such significant health disparities, people of color, QTPOC, LGBTQ+, and I start to understand all the systemic and structural barriers they were. And the fact that I'm sitting here and telling you my story is I'm unique, that I have gotten this far given the intersections that I have, that I haven't been a victim of overt physical violence. There has been bullying. I can assure you, growing up in southern New Hampshire as a brown kid, and you and your siblings being the only brown people in the elementary school, you're quite aware of the differences. And then there's things that ensue, such as racial slurs and bullying. So I have experienced that throughout my life in different periods and in different aspects, but really have come to understand the implications of systemic racism, all the systemic isms that continue, and what I work very hard out to disassemble so that we can actually see what equity looks like. And so a lot of my current work has to do with diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. And it's so important from the context of the more diverse perspectives that we have when we look at complex societal problems, is the more effective that we'll be in solving them. And when we look at who's been at the table, brown folks, LGBTQ plus folks have not been at the table, and if they are at the table, they're not heard. And so I'm really have been spending the past 12 years or so really working on how do we operationalize equity in a way that we see change and progress to address the systemic issues and structural barriers that have persisted for decades and decades and decades. And I recently came upon a quote that's on my whiteboard in my new office, and I'll talk a little bit about my new position that I just started on December 5th. But it's a quote from Cornel West, and it says, let me see if I can remember it, that justice is what love looks like in public, right? Justice is what love looks like in public. And that just really speaks so profoundly, because when we're looking at another person, is we are the same. And when we look at the structures and the systems that have been perpetuated, what it does is it dehumanizes another person. And that really, it's a thing that has to stop. And when I think of justice and that's an expression of love from another human being, it really moves me viscerally, because we all have value, we all have something to contribute, we all deserve respect and dignity. And so my new position is at the Arizona Institute for Resilience. The acronym is AIR, and it addresses environmental and societal issues. So climate change and agriculture, any intersections that you can think, which really from my perspective, it's all public health. And one of the pieces of my new role, and it's the Director of Transdisciplinary Training, involves how do we fuse diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice into transdisciplinary research so that we can really tackle these pressing issues in a deep and meaningful way, and really start to bring collectively all the lenses in so that we can be looking at how do we solve the issues. And you can name any of them, and they all require a variety of lenses so that we can go ahead and embark on this particular endeavor, which is ongoing and will continue to be ongoing.
Tucson firefighters got help and competition from teens participating in the fire department cadet program. Tracy Cayley became a cadet in high school. She's now well on her way to a career in the fire service.
Through the department, I've met a bunch of contacts, and I've got to gone on with my schooling, and I'm now going on to get a fire science degree, and I'll be completing that soon. I get to do ride-alongs, and I got involved with the Southern Arizona Burn Association, just met a lot of people, and have gone on in my education in this area.
Now, Deanna Lewis coordinates Tucson's cadet program. She says the training helps high school students decide whether firefighting is right for them.
For that person who comes here and they say, man, this is what I want to do, it kind of puts a flame under their behinds, and it kind of focuses them a little bit more. The other side of the coin is the person comes in and said, hey, I watched Backdraft, you know, this looks like a cool job. They show up the first day and they're like, I don't like being hot. And they kind of go, this isn't for me. And what's kind of nice is maybe later on down the career path, they won't waste their time pursuing this career because they've had an opportunity to find out what it's about.
Cadet training includes paramilitary-style PE classes, limited fire training, and exposure to firefighters handling their daily tasks. And that wraps up our report. Thanks for watching.
And then the other thing, and this is just as a side, so new fire headquarters, which is off of Cushing now by the freeway, they have a timeline wall. It's all in bronze, and so in 1984 is on there when the first woman firefighter got on, so that's there. So if you had I don't know if you go out into the community, but it's on a plaque, it's right there. And then there's bricks, and you can, someone had purchased a brick, and so Deanna Lewis, it wasn't me, I didn't purchase it for myself, but someone, Deanna Lewis, first woman firefighter, and that's also at fire headquarters. So when you go to walk in the main doors, there's like a little courtyard, bronze statue, a timeline wall, and then there's bricks, and those are in there that if you wanted to add to, you know, the visuals. And I know I have more pictures, it's just really going through, and I would be happy to have them land here because they're so, they just, you know, give you literally a picture in time. Right? And so, you know, just like those newspaper articles, and I'll bring the plates for you. I'm happy to share those because they really speak to one of the things we see, and this is peer-reviewed literature from the National Science Foundation, so NSF, right? And it talks about the research is they looked at a cross-section of PhD dissertations, and the ones that came from minority or underrepresented minorities were much more innovative than the majority. And then what happens though is it's not taken seriously, and so those same students that were innovating at higher rates still do not have the same opportunities in moving into administrative positions in higher education. So the fact that I am now part of the leadership team of AIR and in this position of DEIJ and transdisciplinary training is really a unique position. And one of the things that I recently did is I just put in all my educational endeavors, the achievements that I have, to find out what percentage of the population I am. And what it gives me is it's rare. I'm rare. I'm rare for all of these things, and I never set out to like, oh, I'm going to do these things. It just, I'll say a calling, support, which I'm so deeply grateful for that, you know, my parents really influenced, you know, and supported me and just always told me, Deanna, you can do whatever you want to do. And I always believed that. And I still believe it, which is really puts a smile on my face because it's so important, right? The belief in oneself that you can, that self-agency, that you can do these things. And being so young on the fire department and the frontal part of the brain's not fully developed, I was so naive. I was just like, wow, you know, this is so cool. I get to be and I was a tomboy growing up, so being around male-identified folks all the time was not new to me. I was very comfortable. What I didn't understand is that for them, it was very different for lots of reasons, because their wives, their spouses, their girlfriends didn't look like me. You know, also being part of the LGBTQ plus community, you know, also set me off just a little bit different than who their partners and spouses and wives were. So there was one captain on the job when the second woman got on. Her name is Carol Pranka, and she left. I think she only spent a few years on the job and she left. Her captain, he would not spend the nights at the station when she was working. He would take, right, just these kinds of things that were really aberrant behavior. And what I saw, the way that it was addressed, it was never the department's or the city's problem. It was like, oh, that person, they're problematic. When you start raising questions and raising issues and asking questions, you become the problem. And really sitting back, it's just like, oh, actually, no, we're not the problem. The system and the structures are the problem. And it had taken me a while to really understand that my experience in the fire service is not unique for folks going into and being trailblazers or going into an environment where you're different than the majority, and understanding that. And took a lot, really took a lot of things that really weren't mine to take when I was very, very young, which has significantly, influenced who I am. So I'm grateful for that experience. I'm also acutely aware of how it affects one's mental health and well-being. When you see when people call 911, it's not because they're inviting you for birthday parties, right? Something has gone wrong and you're there to come and mitigate it. And so the things that you see on a repetitive basis and the trauma that you're exposed to leaves an indelible mark on your mental health. There are intersections of the city of Tucson that I drive by and I can tell you, and it was over 25 years ago, exactly what happened there. There are smells, there are sights, and they just become so vivid. Oh yeah, I remember that call, 2 in the morning, south of 22nd, west side of Craycroft, second floor apartment, a SIDS death, right? So those things, they leave indelible marks on those of us who are public servants, whether it's law enforcement, EMS, fire service. We all get exposed to things that we shouldn't have to see. No human should have to witness. And that's a definite point of reflection.